far I have, okay. So far it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, so you got to go to, Kathy, you got to go to here.
Wait a minute.
Go to participant.
Yeah.
And where is, I can't see. That's
There's Louise right there.
So click on Louise.
Wait a second. I'm going to see if I can enable you.
Chatting as a guest.
Okay. And what did it say, Louise? Did you say?
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Let me see if I can do it as a host here, because she just told me that she enabled screen sharing.
I think you have to make me a host.
Right.
We have to make her a host?
Yes.
I thought she said when we met with her, you only had to have screen sharing.
No, you have to make her a host to have screen sharing. We'll get it there. Don't worry. Still have a couple minutes. Let's see.
I can
what is that?
Myself on screen.
Share content.
Let's see.
Only the host can share in this meeting. Okay, I'm going to call her back.
Yep.
And see what we're going to do.
Just mute yourself.
I'm going to mute myself, okay? All right, Louise, I'm going to call Amber back.
Thank you.
Sure.
Benicia Public Library. This is Amber. It is Amber. Okay. Don't know, but I can make her one. I just did. Yep, it's all taken care of.
Thank you, Amber.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Louise, you should be a co-host now too.
I've got it.
Okay. All right.
Let's see how it goes.
Okay. How is everybody tonight? It's good to see you all.
Congratulations, Kathy, on your first event.
My first Zoom event. It's funny because I've been doing Zooming for years, and we used to have that 2-hour long professional account the first year of COVID, and then we deleted it because every place I wanted to go already had a professional account. So you know, but I have not been I've never shared co-hosting with someone else who was the main host. So this is a first time for me. And we'll work.
I've never hosted, so it's in my future.
Well, I have hosted, but it was always from our own home account. I never had to go through someone else. So someone else who had the ultimate controls and had to hand those controls over to you. All right, so you should be able to screen share and everything. We should be good to go.
Looks like I'm good to go.
We should be.
There are 2 people in chat, or one person in chat that can't get in.
Okay, thank you. Let me see.
Sure.
My name is on.
She's obviously in, but we can't see her here.
Christine Horner. Okay, she can't achieve audio, not picture. Maybe she meant she can achieve audio, but not the picture. Her name is on the screen, but I can't see my picture. Is there something I can do about that, or is that something that she has to do something about?
She has to do it.
I think so.
At the bottom of the screen, there's a little thing that says stop video. She has to click on that.
Okay, unless she's on an Apple device, in which point it's at the top of your screen. Christine, can you hear us? Christine, can you hear us? I wonder if she's,
Can you unmute, Christine?
I can unmute her maybe. That's strange. They told me if I was the co-host, I could unmute people, but it's not working. Wait a
Hmm.
minute, maybe I can unmute her this way. Christine. Asked to unmute. I can only ask her to unmute. I can't actually unmute her.
I'm unmuted now.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yay.
Now we can hear
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
That's
But
Christine,
no
right?
picture.
I don't think
Okay.
some picture matters really, because we're watching Louise's presentation. So as
Okay,
long as you can see her, we don't have to see you for any reason.
okay, that sounds fine with me, but I just needed to know if I was in. And right now, the stop video is offered but not chosen, and I am unmuted. So I will mute myself, or
Well, you
you will mute me.
Okay, you don't have to mute yourself yet, Christine. When we start at 6:30, I will be asking everybody to mute themselves so that, you know, we don't have any barking dogs or anything else such as mine.
I'm nodding my head.
All right,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay. All right, and I see Ilian came in, and Ilian, can you start your video? Lee, we got you in person.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, Ilian.
Hi.
Everybody else, we have the picture except right now for Christine. There's Ilian. Okay, got you. All right. So we still have 7 more minutes to go. So while we're waiting for others to join us, is there anybody that would like to speak to Louise about what they are looking for specifically out of this presentation? Or was it covered in the description of the presentation? I see some head nods. Okay.
No, I'm just very open to whatever happens, and I enjoyed the description of what was going to happen, and I'm here to just go with the flow. So,
All right. Thank you. That's what I think we're all here for. Thank you very much. Yeah. And Christine, we now see your keyboard.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, I see it's flashing around now. Yes,
Okay. All right.
all right.
Does anybody have any questions about any of our other events? We have the Love Poetry Contest is which will be on Zoom because we have people from across the country sending things in, and that will be June 2nd. But the deadline date is not till April 1st. If anyone has any questions about the Love Poetry Contest, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, and then the other big event we have coming up is on April 14th, which is not a Zoom event, it's an in-person event. It's a celebration of National Poetry Month, and it's called Our Best to You. And we're inviting everyone, whether they're a very experienced poet or a newbie. We might even have some younger poets. I've invited them, but we'll see how that goes. You can read whatever you believe is your favorite poem. It could be something that's won a prize or been published, but it doesn't have to be. It can be something that is just your favorite in your heart. And so it should be, you know, a lovely event that just celebrates poetry, and I'm sure we'll have some wonderful things coming from the podium, and because it's a party, we'll have some wonderful things on the table.
And I put in the chat about the Ina Kubrith. That has the same deadline as the love poetry. So you have an opportunity for lots of interesting submissions. And if you go to the coolpoetry.org, the information about submission is right there on the first page of the website.
Great.
So we have a lot of overlap here of people who are Benicia poets and Ina Kubrith members. And a lot of Ina Kubrith winning poets.
Wonderful. Is there anyone here who is not from the Bay Area? Helen, where are you from?
I'm actually up in Washington State near the Canadian border, and I belong to the Renaissance Writing Group out of Sacramento, and somehow or other I heard about this Zoom, and I thought, I hope you don't mind me joining in.
Oh no, absolutely. We love getting poets from near and far away. We try to get it in as many places as I could, because there's lots of people on my Poet Laureate mailing list. There's 270 people, and I do not know half of them, having just taken over the position 10 weeks ago. And they are they're from all over the country, so we just love that.
Great.
Kathy or Louise?
Yes.
Yes, actually, I did put my hand up, but nobody's calling on me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My question to Louise is, or what I'd like her to cover, is projecting one's voice when there's no microphone available for open mic. Because my impression is that sometimes the projection of the voice creates a certain artificiality, especially when reading lines that need a soft delivery. So that's my question to you.
Okay.
That's really a good question, Nancy. I really appreciate your asking that, because so many times there are parts of poems that you do want read more softly. And I've been to readings where there's a very soft-spoken person to begin with, and then there's like a whispered line, and it's totally lost to me, totally. So that's really a great question.
Yeah. Yes, I appreciate it too, because often that line is the punchline. It's the last line of the poem, and you're there, what? You know. So, and Nancy, you write a lot of poetry that has a lot of feeling in it, and you know, a lot of feelings that are contradictory to each other, but you're holding them in the same space. And so to try and get that idea across with voice inflection is an extra challenge. So I appreciate that question. Well, we have 14 participants, and I'm going to give people, it's almost time. I'm going to give people just a couple more minutes to tune in.
It's dinner time, so people are rushing from dinner time or maybe coming home from work. But I know people also appreciate having our meetings early, so they have the rest of the evening.
Right, or they can just go to bed.
You're not a night owl like me.
Yeah, or me, or Nancy. Yes. So Robin, you are in Santa Rosa.
Yes, up in Sonoma County.
Yes, okay.
You're welcome.
Well, welcome to here. I mean, I don't feel that Santa Rosa is that far away from us. I still kind of consider you part of the San Francisco Bay Area.
I do too, pretty much.
Oh, mhm. Yeah, pretty part of the world. Yes, indeed. Mm. Mm. And so we've had some other people join us. Is there anyone who is outside of the new folks that just came in? Anyone outside of the San Francisco Bay Area? Good evening, Finbel. Where do you come from? I often used to see you on first Tuesdays when we were online.
I'm in the East Bay. I'm in San Pablo.
Ah, okay. It's funny, you don't know where, you know people's faces very well, but you really don't know where they are when we're all on Zoom together. Yes. Mm. Mm. All right, well, should we start, Louise, and people can just join us?
Sure.
As they come in. Okay, so welcome to everyone tonight. My name is Kathy Monroe. I write under the name Katrina Monroe. And as Louise had said, this is the first workshop I have organized as Poet Laureate in my 10 weeks of experience as Poet Laureate on Zoom. And I hope to do a few more over the course of my term. We did keep what had started back up, which was an in-person first Tuesday programs. So I felt like I didn't want to lose those folks who could not make it down to Benicia for first Tuesday, and that we kind of keep the connection up by having some things on Zoom. The idea tonight about how to make your spoken poetry zing, as Louise has said, is an idea I've had for quite a while, actually years, that I wanted to present. And, this gave me the opportunity. When you hear someone like Louise read her poetry, you noticed all the inflections in her voice, but then you realize it's more than just her voice. It's a poetic song of her whole body language. And the result, when Louise speaks, is that every word of her poems I can not only hear, but they grab my mind and my heart as well. So I thought, who better to make this idea come to fruition than my good friend Louise? And Louise is very well qualified for this. She graduated from San Jose State, majoring in speech and drama with an emphasis on oral interpretation of literature. She's been a puppeteer, a storyteller, a teacher, and owner of an antiquarian bookshop. She began seriously writing poetry in 2017 as a means of dealing with grief, but has since expanded to incorporate all themes that touch her life. Louise has been a featured reader on several Zoom poetry sites, including Benicia First Tuesdays, when we used to meet on Zoom, Sacred Grounds, Riverside Poets, Ina Coolbrith's Circle, and at various churches and schools. Her readings on open mics continue to receive accolades from her fellow poets. Her poems have earned numerous awards from the Marin, Alameda, and San Mateo County Fairs, the Ina Coolbrith Circle, Lincoln Poets, and others. She has been published in anthologies, both in print and online. Her first chapbook from Finishing Line Press will be available for purchase in April. You can listen to her featured readings on YouTube. Louise looks forward to a lively evening of sharing her insights with her fellow poets. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you first for inviting me to do this. I really looked forward to it and spent quite a bit of time kind of analyzing my own approach. And to the very begin with, thank you for coming to get some hints about your poetry presentation. It's going to be in 3 parts. Part 1 will be as if I am the featured reader, and I'm going to be sharing screen and going over some details. The second part will be questions. If you have any more further questions or want anything that I've spoken about gone into in more detail. And then we'll have a short break, and then you will have the opportunity to apply some of what you've learned, and then you'll have an opportunity to read the poem that you brought with you tonight. So you are part of the program. You might want to have your poem next to you as I go over these things. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. Here we go. Let's see what's happening. There we are. All righty. Words mean more than what is set down on paper as written. It takes the human voice to imbue them with the shades of deeper meaning. Maya Angelou. Byways and bygone, and lone nights long, sun rays and sea waves and star and stone, manless and friendless, no cave my home. This is my torture, my long nights, lone. This is a short poem by Maya Angelou. And if you enjoy oral interpretation of literature, Maya Angelou's presentations online are really wonderful examples of great reading. So to answer Nancy's question, the thing that's important about our reading is really our breathing. So when I read this, when I got to the end of bygone, there was a breath. After long, there's a breath. Then this is a long line that kind of all goes together. So that's done on one breath. Then I get a stanza break, another opportunity for a breath. Again, the end of friendless, again of home, and at the end of torture. And then in this particular poem, there's only one punctuation mark, a comma. So that means that there's another possibility for a breath. So what makes a whisper is not a whisper. It's the quality of your voice, not the volume of your voice. And always what we're going to be emphasizing in this presentation is breathing. So let's see if I know how to move this down. Oh dear, what have I done? There it is. Okay. Some generalities about poetry presentation. When reading poetry to yourself, read your poems out loud. Practice is part of becoming a good performer. So the more you read aloud, the better performer you're going to be. Assume that all of your listeners are hard of hearing, which I am, by the way. So what does this mean? When you think about speaking to someone who's hard of hearing, you slow down, you enunciate, and you look at them. All 3 very important elements in presenting your poetry. Prepare for your reading by practicing your poem in advance. The closer you are to memorizing the poem, the more freedom you have for expression. Make eye contact with your listeners. Reading a title is important. If you're reading a poem by another person, I advise giving the author's name first, followed by the title, because the title is an important part of the poem. Here we go. What am I doing? I'm sitting up straight and I'm remembering to breathe as I go on to the next element. So even in a presentation like this, breathing is really important. So reading the title then, pause. Once you've read the title, inhale. Let your audience hear what the title is sharing with them. Sometimes we swallow our words. This happens again if we don't have enough breath to finish a line. Be sure to breathe when you have a line break or a punctuation break. Try not to drop your voice at the end of a line. Remember that the first line of the poem draws the listener in, and the final line of the poem leaves a lasting memory. So take your time with both and keep your breath behind your words. Unless you are a rap artist, there's no such thing as too slow. Note, rap artists are masters of enunciation. Spaces and places for reading. Zoom. Sit close to your microphone source. Keep your manuscript below the level of your face. I have to say, I've seen some poets reading with their head down, and what we see on the screen is the top of their head. Not very appealing. So try to keep your manuscript below the level of your face. Look up as you pause. And here's a helpful hint. When I'm reading one of my poems, I keep my finger going down the poem on the page. So when I stop to look up and respond to my Zoom people, or even if I'm in person, I know where I am when I'm ready to go back to the manuscript. So I pause, look at my audience, and then I can go back to where I left off. That's where my finger is. Imagine that you're making eye contact with each face in each Zoom block. In person, imagine you're speaking to the person sitting at the back of the room. How do you project your voice? Breathing. Try to stand up straight. Breathe from your diaphragm. Project your voice. You want to make eye contact with the people in the front and the people in the rear. Using the microphone. The microphone is your friend. Do not decline the use of it. However, the microphone is not a substitute for clarity, volume, or enunciation. So some people come up to the microphone and they have a little soft voice, and they still have a little soft voice, even though they're using a microphone. So you still need to maintain your volume, even when you're using a microphone. If you are not the first person to read, observe the way the reader ahead of you is using the microphone. Does it work or not? You can get some handy clues from that. If the microphone is stationary, be sure to speak into it, glancing from side to side without moving away from the mic. If it's a handheld microphone, do not move your head away from the microphone. You can practice this skill at home while practicing your poetry. Use any handy object. A hairbrush works really well. And use your microphone and practice as if you are using a microphone when you're practicing your poetry. No microphone.
Yes, love? This is, oop,
Okay. Okay, no microphone. Again, assume you are speaking to the person farthest away. Imagine you're trying to talk to someone across a busy street. We call this broadcasting your voice. And again, emphasizing the fact that breathing and breath control is the most important part about getting your voice out, especially if we're going to talk to the person that's way across the room. So in a way, you have to use your imagination if you're dealing with a group where there is no microphone. Intimate circle reading in critique groups. Use as much emphasis in an intimate reading circle as you would in any other performance situation. Part of what makes your poem interesting, as Maya Angelou pointed out, is the delivery. Here is an excellent opportunity for you to practice delivery. Do not be shy of performing among your peers at a table. Reading outside, the most difficult of venues. If you're reading by a busy street and there's a particular noise problem, like a train or a siren or an airplane, etc., pause. Your audience will wait and be grateful for the pause. Get as close to your audience as you possibly can if you're reading without a microphone. Lift your voice as if you were speaking above the sound of crashing waves. How to make your poetry zing. Hush. Please be quiet. Shut up. Each of these mean the same thing, but how different the tone, the emphasis, the volume. These are hints to look for in the poem that you're about ready to read. This example is taken from a book by Mary Oliver, A Poetry Handbook, a prose guide to understanding and writing poetry. If you don't own that book, I recommend that you get it for both reading and writing. So the chapters on sound and literary devices are very helpful in reading as well as writing poetry. Begin at the beginning. The title is an important part of the reading. What do titles do? Palm Sunday sets the time and the season. Dreaming in the time of the pandemic, a very specific time. Touch me. The listener anticipates an action, sometimes something intimate, which the reader would want to convey in the voice. Thistle, the subject of the poem, is introduced. Poem for a three-legged cow, something unexpected, possibly whimsical or humorous. The title can set the mood of the poem. By the way, that's a poem by Monroe, who's one of our local poets. Little Boy and Lost Shoe. This title tells us that there's a main character and that something happened before the poem began. So in each case, the title is important. So again, you want to read the title? Take a breath. Allow your audience the opportunity to acknowledge the information they just got from the title. Sometimes the title is actually the first line in the poem, making it even more important. Observe punctuation and line breaks. Be aware of verbs. Capture the mood of the poem with the tone of your voice. Is it serious, contemplative, humorous? Does something change within the poem? Is the voice different in different stanzas? Here's a simple poem by Mary Oliver. The highlights are mine. The Poetry Teacher. The university gave me a new, elegant classroom to teach in. Only one thing, they said. You can't bring your dog. It's in my contract, I said. I had made sure of that. We bargained, and I moved to an old classroom in an old building, propped the door open, kept a bowl of water in the room. I could hear Ben, among other voices, barking, howling in the distance. Then they would all arrive. Ben, his pals, maybe an unknown dog or two. All of them thirsty and happy. They drank. They flung themselves down among the students. The students loved it. They all wrote thirsty, happy poems. So let's look at some of these elements. To begin with, there's two different emotions going on here. And the first one is kind of serious, and we're setting the scene. And the second stanza, it's full of joy. So that's the kind of thing that you want to express in your voice. And then looking at punctuation, you can't bring your dog, big period. So there you have a time for breathing and a time for a pause. It's in my contract, comma, it's a pause, a parenthetical phrase that can be quieter than what it's in my contract. I had made sure of that. So in the next stanza, we're looking at some great verbs: bargained, kept, here, barking, howling. And then my favorite verb in this poem is flung. So not only did they come in, they drank, they flung themselves down among the students. So you want to look at what words are important and can be emphasized when you're reading. Let's see, did we cover everything there? Another thing, again, we're breathing. So when you have a nice period here in the middle, it's an opportunity for a breath. Kept a bowl of water in the room. Breathe. I could hear Ben, among other voices, barking, howling in the distance. Period. Breathe. All right, let's move on. The importance of the first and last lines. We want to draw the listener in with the first line of the poem. The final line is often the most memorable or the resolution of the poem. Don't drop the last line of your poem. Again, breathing is important when reading aloud. And if you're doing a feature, it's also handy to have some liquid close by. So this is a poem by Ada Limon. And this parentheses down here is the poem turns here, and that's my remark. And again, the highlights are mine. The visitor. A neighborhood tuxedo cats walking the fence line, and the dogs are going bonkers in the early morning. The louder they bark, the more the vexation grows, the less the cat seems to care. She's behind my raised beds now, no doubt looking for the family of field mice I've been leaving be, because why not? The cat's dressed up for the occasion of trespass, formal attire for the canine taunting. But the whole clamor is making me uneasy. this might be what growing older is. My problem, I see all angles of what could go wrong, so I never know what side to be on. Save the mice, shoot the cat, quiet the dogs. Instead, I do what I do best. Nothing. I watch the cat leap into the drainage ditch, dew wet fur against the day lilies, and disappear. The dogs go quiet again, and the mice are safe in their caves. And I'm here waiting for something to happen to me. So again, we're looking at words that are important, and this turn is really important in this poem because we've gone from this really fun setting, all of a sudden something is changing. And then this really strong punctuation, a colon is a strong pause. And then this change of pace when you're reading. So save the mice, shoot the cat, quiet the dogs can be a little speedier than the rest of your poem. And then the really important ending here, how each word is really important because the poem has changed from the visitor that's the cat to the visitor of old age or aging, which comes in as the turn in this poem. So you want to analyze your own poems as you analyze someone else's when you're getting ready to read. What's important in your poem and where do you want your audience to be? Is there a turn in your poem that you want to empathize? And be sure to observe your own punctuation. Pause and breathe. Okay, here is a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It's full of literary devices that can be used to enhance the sound and feeling of the poem as it is read. Alliteration, the repetition of the initial sound. Here we have a lot of S sounds. Consonants, the repetition of the sound within the word, such as in rush and rising. The onomatopoeia, which is rush and rushing and roar. Assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds. These are things that you can be aware of as you're reading, not necessarily that you're going to go through and analyze. And again, in this poem, just as we had in the Ada Limon poem, there's a turning. So here is the sound of the sea. The sea awoke at midnight from its sleep, and round the pebbly beaches far and wide, I heard the first wave of the rising tide rush onward with uninterrupted sweep, a voice out of the silence of the deep, a sound mysteriously multiplied, as of a cataract from the mountain's side, or roar of winds upon a wooded steep. So comes to us at times from the unknown and inaccessible solitudes of a being, the rushing of the sea tides of the soul, and aspirations that we deem our own. Are some divine foreshadowing and foreseeing of things beyond our reason or control. So in this poem, we have 3 changes of pace. In the beginning, it's slow. The poem is awakening. So you want to slowly awaken your listeners to what is going on. And far and wide, wide is a nice broad word that allows you to expand your voice. And then all these wonderful words of rushing and rising, and then this slowing down to mysteriously multiplied, and then moving forward and rushing again. And then at the turning point, a slowing of the pace so that your reader, or your listener rather, can hear this turning in the poem. And the importance again of the end of the message at the very end of the poem. I've included this poem, which I'm sure a lot of you know, because it's about poetry. And again, the I and the I in the first line is important, again, to read your title, pause, and then identify. Here we're identifying that the narrator is the person speaking. So we don't want to lose the first word in the poem, which is the word I. Introduction to poetry. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. And that is by Billy Collins. And I hope that you will take the opportunity when you're reading your poem to water ski and enjoy your poem as you're getting ready to read it. Whoops, what happened? Uh-oh, what have I done? There we go. Sorry. Okay, so here's a kind of a summation in a way that comes from one Eileen Murphy. Read out loud. How voice and attitude can change how we understand poetry, by Eileen Murphy. And here she outlines the things to look at as you're getting ready to read your poems. Attitude of the poet, the tone of the poem, point of view, who owns the action, rhyme and meter, the musicality of the poem, intonation, literary devices, imagery, illusions and metaphor, the why of the poem, what changes occur in the poem, line breaks, punctuation, and stanzas. All these things we've kind of looked at as I've gone along. And I thought I would read a poem that you're probably all very familiar with because it's about musicality. And it also allows how your voice can go up and down in your reading to emphasize the movement in the poem. The swing. How do you like to go up in a swing? Up in the air so blue? Oh, I do think it the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. Up in the air and over the wall, till I can see so wide, rivers and trees and cattle and all, over the countryside. till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. Up in the air I go flying again, up in the air and down. And finally, this is a very curious poem that I found when I was looking for poems about sound. It's by Simon Armitage, who is a poet laureate of England, and it's called The Shout. It's about communicating through sound with a really interesting turn at the end. Also wanted to emphasize that you can use hand gestures when you're reading. So this is a poem that has hand gestures in it. And if you are practicing your poem that you're going to read aloud, you might want to include some hand gestures. The Shout. We went out into the schoolyard together, me and the boy, whose name and face I don't remember. We were testing the range of the human voice. He had to shout for all he was worth. I had to raise an arm from across the divide to signal back that the sound had carried. He called from over the park. I lifted an arm. Out of bounds, he yelled from the end of the road, from the foot of the hill, from beyond the lookout post of Fretwell's farm. I lifted an arm. He left town, went on to be 20 years dead with a gunshot hole in the roof of his mouth in Western Australia. Boy with the name and face I don't remember. You can stop shouting now. I can still hear you. A rather chilling poem. Really, I was really fascinated by it, but the whole idea of shouting across a street is things that you want to think about or imagine when you're reading a poem. And finally, here's Dr. Oliver Turrell from Loughborough University. Should poetry be read in quiet solitude, enjoyed in silence? Or is poetry at its best when it's being declaimed, recited for an audience, and read aloud for the world to hear? The answer, of course, is both, and it perhaps depends on the poem. Below, we introduce 10 of the greatest poems suitable for being read aloud. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but we believe these are some of the best poems for reciting at the top of your voice. Have fun, everyone, and try not to startle your cat. I've included this because I think it's important to practice reading poems aloud, and these particular poems have all these things that I covered in this presentation. So here are some suggestions for practice. Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Felicia Hemans' Bianca, Keats's La Belle Dame sans Merci, Poe the Raven, Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade, Emily Dickinson's A Narrow Fellow in the Grass, Lewis Carroll Jabberwocky, John Masefield Cargoes, Dylan Thomas, Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night. So I think it's time for me to, let's see, how do I do this? Stop screen sharing. All right. Okay. Anybody have any questions from what you've heard? Oop, Robin.
Louise, this training is excellent, especially for those English is not her native language, like my case. If you poets rehearse your poems out loud 5 times, I must do it 10, 15 times.
Absolutely.
I record it and I hate my voice. I hate my intonation. I hate everything. So I have to do it and do it. And I'm going to follow your advice, intonation, speed, enunciation, as well as breathing. So this is a wonderful, excellent training, especially for me.
Thank you. Thank you. And Robin?
Thank you, Louise, and thank you for your excellent information on reading aloud, reading poetry. I have a couple of questions. One is, will your materials that you read through tonight, will those be available later for the participants of the group?
I would be happy to send anybody who would like it. You can put your email in the chat if you like, and I'm happy to send you the entire program.
Thank you so much. And then my second question is, I have some problems with my throat and my voice. Do you have any recommendations for like how to condition your throat or your voice prior to doing speaking?
Two things. First of all, you try not to speak from your throat. You try to speak from your chest, from your diaphragm. Sit up straight, stand up tall, and breathe. Breathing, as I've emphasized throughout this presentation, is super important. If you don't have enough breath, then you're never going to be able to get through the line. And then you start to rely on your throat instead of your breath. So breathing is super important.
Thank you.
And also, frequently what I do is I have a cough drop before I start. And have liquid near you. Yeah, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Louise. You answered a lot of my questions. In particular, one of my questions was going to be, do you believe that there are some poems which are better for reading out loud and some poems better for reading silently? And I think that that the person that you were referring to kind of answers that question. Yes, there are such things, and I've always kind of felt that way, that there are some that are just a challenge and others that are a joy. I did have a question, and I think about line breaks and enjambment. And I don't know if this is a question about the writing of poetry or the reading of poetry out loud. I've always understood line breaks and enjambment to be things that were done to help you express the words. But I noticed, for example, in the poem The Shout, that first stanza, which goes on and incorporates half the first line of the second stanza, it didn't seem appropriate to read it as it was written. It seemed appropriate to read it as it was meant, as the literal meaning of it is. Could you shed some light on that?
I think it's kind of the choice of the reader. In some ways you could have a smaller pause. So if you're looking at end of a line and it's and there's a punctuation mark, that indicates a pause. If if it's flowing, then you have an opportunity, maybe you have a smaller pause that brings you down to the next line. So part of it is the convention of the poet. And I think you maybe when you're writing your own poetry and you're talking about enjambment, it's like, why are you enjamming? Is it just because you want it to look better on the page, or is it because you want a different meaning? And those are things, again, that book that I recommended by Mary Oliver, she talks about that in one of her chapters about how to use enjambment, why to use enjambment. And, you know, any of the books that are about writing poetry, other poets cover that in those books. And I think, you know, when you're writing your own poetry, you want to consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. Hi, Louise. Thank you
Hi,
so
Cheryl.
much. Thank you so much for this wonderful training. This is fabulous. I realized when I was listening to you at the beginning of your presentation, I don't think I'm aware of how I sound.
Say that again.
I don't think that I'm aware of how I sound, of how far my voice might carry. And I'm wondering if you had any helpful hints, or if you can think of any ways that I might become more aware by looking into the audience to see if they are actively listening or if they're leaning in, or it just all goes by so fast. It's like a blur, and then my poem's over. You know?
That's a really good question, but I think what you can do is be aware of what I spoke about in the very beginning, that you want to maintain your volume. And the real problem is people believing or thinking that the microphone is enhancing their voice. It's, you still have to use a decent volume in your voice in order to project it. And you know, part of it is experience. And did someone come up to you at the end and say, wow, I really loved your poem, and where were they sitting in the audience? So, you know, I think it's experience. And again, the whole idea of breathing is super important. And the interesting thing is, until I was ready to do this presentation, it's something that has come with my training, that I do intuitively, but to stop and realize that that is probably the most important thing when I read a poem, beside expressing the information. But it's really, breathing is super important.
Thank you.
Becky?
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you thought, or if you had any recommendations about whether or not people should be recording their readings in advance and practicing that way and getting their own feedback from hearing their own voice.
I think that would be really helpful. Yeah. I mean, I've listened, I've gone and watched my own presentations on my featured readings, and I realized that in one, I kept looking up at the ceiling. I'm like, what is she looking at the ceiling for? So, you know, again, right now, I'm looking at my audience. It's, you know, it's kind of hard on Zoom, but that was another thing I was telling you. So here's my manuscript. If it's down here, I look at it, and then I look at my audience. So that, you know, another element. And I think, yes, I think if you have the opportunity, and we all have these cell phones, that you can practice. And you can also, when you're doing that, you'll see whether you're reading too slowly, whether you're reading too softly. And I hope I also answered Nancy's question about the whisper, that whispering is a voice quality, not a volume.
Thank you.
Karen?
Carol, did I pronounce your name right? Cherol, Carol?
I'm sorry.
It's Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay, Cheryl. let me share this to you. When I had the audacity to join the poetry group, the first time I read a poem, I was so scared that at the end, I didn't remember a word. I didn't remember what I had read. And then two angels, Becky and Kathy, gave me good feedback. And with that good feedback, I said, okay, I'm okay. And that's why I'm still with the poetry group, because of these two wonderful people that gave me that good feedback. So, but I can tell you long stories, but I do practice. I record my voice now.
That's a wonderful awareness. Thank you.
Let's see, somebody, so Karen.
Oh, well, this was an issue about what mode you're reading your poetry from, because I've tried in various modes, and you were talking a lot about reading from paper. At some points I've tried reading right from my phone or my iPad, and tomorrow I have this big reading, so I'm going to be reading from paper, I decided, which, is there I don't know if you or other people have feelings about this. What method, now that we have technology, I get sometimes when I do use technology, I can get more stuck than paper. So
I think that's a really good question. And I have to say, when I've been at live readings and people are reading from their phone, you really lose a lot. They don't tend to look at their audience. They're looking at their phone. They don't tend to gesture. I think I think we do a disservice by trying to read from a phone. I would encourage you to use paper copies. It simply is the old fashioned.
And people who have books, they read from their books. I actually almost think that the paper copies, but sometimes then they're looking through their book to find, but that's a whole.
I think reading from the book is better than a phone.
Yeah.
But I think also when you're reading from a book, you're trying to hold the book open.
Yeah, that's what I've noted.
And I think it's better again to have a manuscript, a single page of paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question, Karen.
Well, it's totally on my mind. I'm like, I'm going to lose my paper while
I know some people do read from their screen on Zoom, and I'm not sure how that's done, so I can't answer that question.
I always read from my screen on Zoom, actually, because that's easy to maintain eye contact, because you're looking at your screen and everybody's on your screen. So, yeah.
And I agree too, reading from the screen for Zoom meetings, particularly excellent. Absolutely excellent. It's much more direct.
Yeah.
You have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Looking at the audience, I recently had this experience where I'm kind of scanning the audience, and I noticed, this was with a lot of poet laureates, I noticed an expression on one's face which was almost horror, and it was like, and I just, ignored it. But that can be distracting too.
Okay, so when you're looking at your audience, you're not really looking at them. So what you're doing is you're scanning your audience. You don't want your eyes to focus on a particular, like, oh God, look at that guy, he's chewing gum, or oh my goodness, that person's asleep. And that's happened. I mean, I've been in a performer, and there's somebody back there sleeping. No, you don't really focus. This is a technique.
You're just glancing
You're glancing
at the audience.
Exactly.
Not really, it's not an intimate thing at all. That's what you're suggesting.
Right. So you're not focusing on who you are looking at. You are sort of scanning your audience, and you're not looking eye to eye.
Okay.
Good question. Anything else? Wow, you guys had some really great questions. So we're going to take a break, and that'll give you an opportunity to stand up, get a drink of water, and then we're going to come back and have you read the poem that you brought. So you could take this time to look at your poem and make any remarks on it. And I wrote down who came today, and some people have already left. So we lost a few people, and whoever is still here will have an opportunity to read.
I think we only lost two, Louise. So we have 15 left. Well, actually, that includes you. So we have 14 participants.
Perfect.
Okay. And so I'd like to ask everybody to mute while you're busy practicing your poem once around. And but you can stop your video if you want, but certainly don't turn us off. And when do you want me to call people back, Louise?
I don't have a phone in front of me. Do you have the time?
Yes, it's 7:27.
So what, 25 to?
Okay, so that would be 8 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I will call everybody back in 8 minutes. All right, happy practicing, everybody. Please mute. Okay, everyone, can you hear my voice? Okay. All right, everybody, let's see. Is Nancy back? Nancy Tolan, Deborah? I can't tell whether you folks are back.
Kathy, do you want me to call on people as I wrote them down coming in, or do you want to call on people?
Whichever way is your preference. I mean, it might be that, I mean, we can make the assumption that most people want to share, but I don't know that we can make it that everyone wants to share. So, you know, people can just say pass if they would rather listen to others.
Okay.
So you can call them in whatever order you want, Louise.
Okay, so maybe I'll go ahead and call on the people as I have recorded them when they came in. Arlene seems to have disappeared. Don't have her anymore. So the next person who was online was Nancy Tolan.
Looks like twins. I'm waiting for the roofer to inspect my leaky roof, my ceiling bulge, my waterlogged window ledge. I'm waiting for the roofer to inspect that big balloon that hangs above my head, those latex stretch marks, that badass paint. Looks like twins, my cousin quips, then flashes a sympathetic smile. My pregnant ceiling now grows hourly. Hope its water doesn't break.
Very nice, Nancy. Thank you. I like that you looked up as if you were looking at the ceiling when you were reading. Nice, slow. We got each word nice and clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. But, you know, it is so easy on Zoom without a mic, at open mic. It's much more difficult for certain poems.
Right, I think it is. And I think that those hints that I gave in the talk, you know, knowing your poem as best as you can, and even if you've memorized it, you can still have your manuscript in front of you. And then the idea that you can follow each line with your finger as you're reading. So you read a line and you make your eye contact with your audience and then back down again. And then the idea that here is my microphone, handheld microphone, keep it in front of you, no matter where you look. So those are things that you can practice. And another thing that I forgot to mention that is helpful in practicing, especially if you're going to talk about in person, is to practice in front of a mirror.
Okay.
All righty. Thanks, Nancy. Please remute yourself. And let's see, the next person is Robin.
Okay, thank you, Louise. When they're too young to tell you where it hurts. Your stomach rumbled like something between an earthquake and a lion. Then came the vomiting, your rice pudding climbing back up your throat of its own volition. You couldn't talk yet, so you cried, your head a burning red tomato, fever 104. At the ER, the doctor made me put you into an ice bath to get down the high fever. Knowing you wouldn't understand why mommy was doing this to you, I plunged you into that frigid water, both of us wailing. Your cloth diaper soaked up the cold water, weighed you down like an unabridged dictionary. I struggled to keep you upright, your screaming lungs from inhaling the ice water, until your temperature dropped, and we were both swaddled in towels on the floor next to the tin wash tub. One of us still sobbing.
Wow, beautiful poem. I like the way you made eye contact with us as you were reading. Well done.
Thank you.
By the way, and if anybody, one of the things that in another reading group that I'm with, the person who follows the reader comments on the person ahead of them. So if you have a comment when it's your turn about the person who read before you, please do that. Or you're welcome to put comments in the chat about the people that you're hearing reading tonight. Let's see, Helen, would you like to read?
Thank you. This is called Mademoiselle Havisham. Havisham, say it right, as in Dickens' story. At the edge of sound, time ticks its endless monotone while she waits for him. The second hand counts its journey haltingly round and round the French floral face of the dainty gift he gave her. Think of me, he had said, with a farewell kiss, until tomorrow. She waits in her elegant boudoir, checking her hair, her face in the rococo mirror, adjusting her wedding gown over her bosom. She walks to the balcony to search in vain. Along the boulevard, stylish carriages pass. Smart couples stroll by in top hats and parasols. Monsieur Eiffel's tower fades slowly into the night, to reappear with the morning light. Still, he has not come, and still she waits. No tread on the stairs, no knock on the door, no sound but the clock counting every second, every hour, every year, with her expectations, her beauty fading. Think of me, he had said, with a farewell kiss, until tomorrow.
Now, nicely done, Helen. That's a beautiful poem.
Thank you.
I liked the way you changed your pace within the poem and how you emphasized each word, especially as you got towards the conclusion and the summing up.
Thanks.
Thank you. Helen, you want to remute, please? And Karen, I think you are up next.
I'm sorry, I didn't really practice this, but I've read it before, but I'm gonna give it a try. I did a little practice. Sorry. Ode to the MRI. I enter the portal, feet first, taped up, a secured sarcophagus, hands folded over my heart on a table that moves me down into a tube where magnets and radio waves will alter my atoms, align them all in the same direction, so my tissue, bones, tendons will speak to this oracle eye about what's causing the problems hidden deep in my body. It feels otherworldly or almost holy. But first, I must overcome the panic from being confined in a tunnel while confronted by the alien sounds of this magnetic beast. Even with earplugs, I can hear the undeciphered language of bangs, pulls, pulses, rays, and grunts as the gradient coils receive the electric pulses. And each pulse makes the coils vibrate, seducing my body to reveal its secrets. It's not like I've been struck by lightning with my hand on a pole. I won't die during this storm. Claustrophobia is something else, like being stuck in a sleeping bag that's too tight to get out of with danger coming. So all I can do is go deeper into the current, keep my eyes closed while my mind falls out of gravity and finds this machine as magic. It has taken me back to my childhood puppy. He's jumping up, licking my face. We're rolling around in the grass. My first animal love, always the best fix for healing fear and pain.
Ooh, great poem, Karen. Well done. I like the way you captured the mood of the poem in your voice, and the gestures. It enhanced the reading. Thank you. All right, let's see. We are at, Karen, you need to remute. And Ellen, you're up next.
Thank you for that, Karen. I really, something that Louise said earlier and what I really saw you demonstrate that I don't give a lot of thought to is enunciating. And I think that's, important. Glad that somebody's pointing it out. Thank you. Black Widow. Tucked in her web in the corner of the flower bed, I was aware of her as she was surely aware of me. We lived by each other's courtesy until the day she startled me inches from my bare hand as I cut a rose. I killed her with my garden clippers, then destroyed her web, surprised by the resistance of the silk. I woke the next morning to the rose in the vase, already dropping red petals onto the white tablecloth.
Oh, I like the understated and the final line. Well delivered. That final line really made all the difference in the poem. And I also like the way you took a nice breath before you started. Once you gave the title, you had a nice breath. So don't forget, readers, to give the listener a moment to hear what the title is all about. So we don't want to rush into your poem. Well done, Ellen. Thank you. Let's see, Christine. Is there Christine still here? No. Okay. Eliane?
Gracias, my dear Louise. Ellen, I really enjoyed the Black Widow and especially her flower bed. That was a wonderful description. The scale of life is unbalanced. Yes, indeed. Laborers sweat for daily bread. Others don't. And they have a variety of bread every day. Many earn little, few earn much. Many are starving, others are full of greed. Hence, some weigh a lot, others are malnourished. There is no valid reason for this. Have compassion and help others. Use tools for change, but beware of charlatans and demagogues. Those who through their popularity make promises to gain power, while on the scale of life, take care of yourself and others. Life is an uneven scale, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can strive to balance it out.
Thank you. I like the way you took your time in getting these words across and the fine enunciation. And also the emotion that you expressed that matched so well with the poem. Well done. Let's see, Cole. I don't see anybody named Cole. So, Lee, you're next.
I wrote this poem for a photograph.
Lee, I'm going to stop you because we can't hear you. So you need to get a little bit closer to your Zoom screen.
Okay.
Now.
I wrote this poem to go with a photograph. Ardea alba, great white egret, reposed, still as a god, in effigy, stick-legged, tall, white essence enlivens the air she effaces, inhabits no displacement here, only the dignity nature exhales serenely, wistfully. I misplaced emphasis on the word inhabits, but it was too question marky because I wasn't.
Thank you, Lee. I like the way you emphasize each word. Nice, slow reading, and that's what we want in order to absorb the meaning of the poem.
The challenge is it's so small that, I mean, it's finished in the blink of an eye. The lines are just a word or two, each line. So,
did we interrupt you before you were done reading?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And ask you to remute, please. And next up is Becky.
Lee, I really liked the way that you read your poem, and it was very stately, just like the bird that you were describing, the statue that you were describing. The title of my poem is GPS. After I got lost, I thought to check my map, a tattered thing with my first husband's name written possessively on the front. The direction of that marriage had gone off course too, in the way that first marriages sometimes do. But now my thoughts were also lost and I remained misplaced in space and time, stuck in some wayside rest stop. A song repeats as I try to figure it all out. Something about trying to find the way home. You're all alone, a rolling stone. Oh, wait, perhaps it's the song about God, trying to get home on the bus, just like us, just like us.
No, I like the way you looked at the audience and the nice time you took, especially with the conclusion, and your gestures as well added to your presentation. Well, you all are doing so well. You're all getting A's.
Thanks, Louise.
Okay, next up is Cheryl.
Becky, I love how your poem was so awash with different perspectives. I really enjoyed it. It made me smile at times and really go into the thoughtful aspect of the word choices. Very beautiful. Champagne hair. Less than 12 and fiercely independent, I rang her doorbell. Proud of my initiative. Dropping in was not my habit. Midday in the avenues were quiet. Neighbors at work, at school, or otherwise occupied. Some moments passed before she answered. And then there it was, her great big naked bosom. And she, in just panties, unaffected by her ostensive posture, sweeping a hand across their undersides as to wipe away accumulated moisture. I stood transfixed. They undulated back into anatomical position. All I could muster was, "Your hair is pink." "Champagne," she declared with its pigmentation. She never asked me in. So, after the awkward "hello, how are yous," I turned and continued home. In the half-century since, I've tried to imagine how she felt so bold. How, in those moments, she couldn't find a shift. And what was happening that she had to put on hold? In the future, I announced when I'd be there. And still, the image of my birth mother's bosom remains as vivid as that champagne hair.
Oh, very wonderful, Cheryl.
Thank you.
That's a great reading. I love the way you emphasize the word bold, and your gestures were terrific. It really captured the humor and the visual in that poem. Well done. I hope to hear that again sometime.
You
That's
probably will.
That's a beauty.
It's true, by the way.
Ah, most wonderful. All right, Michelle.
Thank you. So I am sick right now, so I will do my best. So I am a West Coast wild woman. I have growl for guts. I am purposely informal in speech because I value directness and clarity. I am curious about what ignites people's passions and soothes their soul. I live for play banter and play fights. Playing is the wind in my sails. It's what keeps my fires going. I am from train towns and water cities. I'm from the Carquinez Strait, where paddleboarders take on cargo ships with no fear. I belong on adventures and in the outdoors. I am a distance swimmer, a water woman herself. I am the instructor that taught kids to swim, the therapeutic exercise leader, and the friendly cashier at the cashier confessional booth. People approached me in the city I taught swimming and water safety with faces full of pride and boast about their kids or their own achievements, like being the best in the pool party, slaying it on the swim team, or becoming a water polo champion. I am the baddest gummy bear.
Nice. I like the repetition of I am, where we know all the I ams, who you are. Well done. Thank you. Deborah Silverman, are you reading tonight?
No, I'm not reading. I'm just being an audience and I'm enjoying it very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Francis.
Well, I didn't get much chance to practice. So, okay, I'll try this. Gratitude to my mother, Nancy. Nancy cleared the path for everyone, sweeping, sweeping, sweeping golden leaves, green leaves, silver-backed eucalyptus. At Brookdale, she found fossil, a carved stone tool, microscopic creatures by the fountain after rain. Sweep, sweep, sweep. Her paintings depict longing as flowers, landscapes where she has been, hopes of sky, owl scat, holes something has nested in. Observe, identify, keep in order, sweep, sweep. Sweep as you go. The path as always changes. Every leaf signifies the life of the tree.
Thank you, Francis. I love the sweeping. It was just the way it wove through the poem and your voice in reading it, that we could really get the feeling of that word, and that literary device that you use is very effective when you're reading it.
Gracias.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, I think we're down to our hostess, Kathy Monroe. Did you bring?
I did bring something, and thank you, Francis. The repetition of sweep, sweep, sweep would just slow the poem down so we could really imagine this woman. Yes. I picked a difficult one, Louise. I picked a sonnet that in my challenge is, how do you read a poem that has strong meter as sonnets do in iambic pentameter without making it sing-song? And how do you read the rhyming schemes so it's noticed? Or do you not worry about the rhyming scheme being noticed? Because, sonnets have a very specific rhyming scheme. So those are my questions that perhaps you can help me with.
So do you want an answer beforehand?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
So one of the things you have to remember, even when you're reading something that has meter, like the Swing of Robert Louis Stevenson, don't forget the meaning. The meaning and the punctuation are still really important. So in order to not become sing-songy, you want to concentrate on the meaning.
Okay, I will try that.
Hope that answers the question.
Yes, whether I can execute it or not. Okay, sonnet on a hill. I wander, lonely, aching, sad, between these hills that often did I walk and bide. But now I travel here alone, unseen, without my faithful buddy by my side. Exhausted, finding rest beside a tree that stands so tall, a burbling brook nearby. I stroke the ground so soft upon my knee. The fog rolls in, obscuring my wet eye. He'd romp these hills in unleashed liberty, to chase and spin until he's called back home. But now he's buried 'neath his favorite tree. No longer with him can these hills I roam. My heavy heart would love to hug him still. Instead, I leave his spirit on this hill.
You didn't have any trouble at all reading that meter. I think the fact that you emphasized each word slowly and enunciated it, that's exactly what you needed to do. I don't think anybody felt that as being sing-songy at all. Beautiful. Well done.
Thank you.
I would like to invite everybody to unmute and have any comments in general that anybody would like to say about the presentations you heard. I still think there are some of you who would like to, I need to slow down some more. Still think about slowing down when you're reading. I think we all tend to get excited about what we're reading and sometimes we rush. Becky had a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. How do you handle flubs? You read a word incorrectly, or you skip a word or even a line because your eyes get lost on the page or something. Is it acceptable to say, oops, hang on, or just go on as though nothing had happened?
I would like to not have people say, oops, or, oh, I made a mistake, or, oh, it really interrupts. So if you made a mistake, which I did in one of the readings I was doing there, you might have noticed that I read the wrong word. It was right there on the screen. So you obviously knew I didn't read the right word, but I didn't stop, because if I stop, then I've completely lost the poem. So regather yourself and continue on. I would definitely not say oops, or I'm sorry, or I made a mistake.
Oh yeah, that's such a drag.
Excellent.
Helen?
What do you do, or what do you suggest when you have a fit of nerves beforehand? How can you calm down your racing heart in order to just be able to start reading your poem?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you. I think it's a microphone. Can you read?
I could.
Yeah, how do you get rid of the nerves ahead of time?
Look, I'll repeat it for you. It just
Okay.
She's wondering, like, if you're getting anxious when you come to read, how would one deal with that?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the translation. Karen knows I'm hard of hearing, and sometimes my hearing aids don't pick up the sounds that I need. So one of the things, again, know your poem beforehand. Practice, practice, practice. That helps immensely. Before you're ready to read, breathe, breathe. Breathing is so important. And I didn't see any anxiety in your reading. It was lovely. But we all feel anxiety. I felt anxiety before I came to do this presentation tonight. It's been a long time since I taught anything. I mean, I did a long, long time ago, and I haven't taught a class in a long time.
Yeah, and just as aside to that, actors say this all the time. It's if you don't feel anxiety, there's like something off with that. And the Buddhist, I've just learned from Jane Hirschfeld that one of the top of all the fears of this 5 Buddhist top psychology fears, fear of public exposure or reading is the highest, which I am going to actually say to my audience tomorrow when I read. I'm just going to acknowledge it because it is for me.
I think in a way you feel more anxiety when you're in person. And I mean, we're comfortable in our own spaces here. when you're in front of an audience, and thing that I always worry about is just getting from my seat to the microphone. And especially right now I have a bad knee, so I have to make sure I don't fall when I get up. So when I was at the reading the other day, I got up and stood for, that's another thing. If you're at a public reading and you know your order of reading, it helps for you to stand and be ready to walk forward when it's your turn. Because just literally getting up out of the chair can be kind of discombobulating for you as the reader. So if you stand in that break when the person, two people before you have finished reading, get yourself out of the chair and stand off to the side and be ready. And that, that helps the anxiety too. Any other comments? Nancy?
That's helpful. You mentioned actually sucking on a cough drop beforehand, because I'll tell you, sometimes all of a sudden my throat gets so froggy, and I'm going to the kitchen and drinking some hot water, hoping it'll dissolve, and it's like ridiculous. Why does that happen? Is that just nerves?
That's, I think, the cough drop ahead of time. And the other thing, what you just mentioned, you're drinking hot water. Sometimes we make the mistake, we get a water bottle at the reading, it's cold. That's not good. Yeah. It's better to have warm water. So, tap water or warmer water, or a cup of tea or something that's warm is much better before you're reading than something that's cold. Cold will just, can freeze up your vocal cords.
Right.
Robin?
Yeah, I just want to say, I've always heard that drinking milk products or like coffee and milk is bad for you. It's bad for your voice. Is that true?
I would not drink milk products beforehand, no. Yeah, that creates, phlegm in your throat. So, clear liquids, warm water. Wow, you guys are wonderful. What a fun evening.
You are wonderful.
Yeah. You made it a fun evening, Louise.
You are the best, Louise.
Thank you, Kathy, for having me and for expressing an interest in this. And I'm hoping now that I can share it with some other groups, because there are other groups around the Bay Area that might enjoy a similar presentation. And if you have any comments too about the presentation that you think could improve, please let me know what you would like, what I could do to improve the presentation.
Oh, absolutely. I think you should share it with other groups, Louise, because all the time that you put into it really showed. I mean, it was a very professional, presentation. It was not an off the cuff thing. So, and yet our questions are off the cuff, and you handle those just fine too.
I really appreciated other people's questions, because some of the things I do intuitively, so you have to stop and think about it, but I cannot emphasize enough: slow down, breathe. Those are the two most important things.
Yes. I noticed several people did put their emails in to get Louise's presentation in writing. So if you have not done that and you would like to get it, that would be wonderful. Just put it in the chat, please. And Louise, do you know how to take a screenshot of the chat?
I'm not sure. If I save the chat, does it come up?
That's another way of doing it.
My computer, if you take a screenshot, you'll get a link right after you get out of the Zoom. It'll be on your computer. But
Okay. You can see that I'm technologically challenged. In fact, I'm going to have Karen guide me in how to read my poem off the screen. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
At any rate, thank you all for coming and for being such a cooperative audience. And I loved hearing all of your poems. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We will see you. You know, if you can make it to First Tuesdays, if you're, you know, in commuting distance of Benicia, we would love to see you on the first Tuesday of every month in the library. But other than that, maybe we will see you on the 14th of April for the party.
Definitely, definitely on the 14th. Unfortunately, I'm taking a class that meets on Tuesdays, which is really annoying. So thank you, Kathy, for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Okay, our pleasure. All right,
Thank
good
you,
night.
Kathy. Thank you, Louise.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay.
See you in the
Thank
near
you.
future,
Thank you,
everybody.
Louise.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kathy, and I loved everyone's work.
So if I just, no one answered, how do I actually copy this chat line?
So
Why do you want to copy the chat, huh?
because she wants the addresses.
You-
So can I help? Okay, so
Is that someone monitoring us from the library?
Yes.
There is somebody monitoring us, yes.
Thank you very much. I did not respond to the library. Thank you for monitoring us and hosting us, Benicia Public Library.
There.
No, thank you for censoring us. Well, all right. I'm just leaving.
Have you figured out how to do it, Louise?
I wish I could see.
That's a, okay.
See, send to.
Where do you see send to?
Send. But I think that's just the group chat. That's everybody. No, that's who you're sending to.
Okay.
Let's see here. Can I sit down?
Sure.
Thanks.
Oh, look, there's some things. There's a little
know,
message
I know.
one. There's a add people one, and there's 3 dots, which means more. Try the 3 dots. Copy. There we go.
Copy, and let's go to your
My drive
docs.
is here.
No, I want your docs.
My docs is.
Your homepage. Oh boy.
No, you
I
can
want a
get
new
out of
one.
here.
No, I just want a new one. Whoop.
You want to? Yeah, here's the new one.
Nope, that's only the one. That doesn't help. Back to see, I could copy the one. What's this? That has to do with your next message. See,
Yeah, those
recording
dots
is
were
on.
only at the end, so I don't understand that.
No, and that only referred to this one.
Well,
So I
why
can
did
make
it
dots.
only refer to?
Okay, I can make dots happen for that one too, probably by touching it there. Let's see if I can spell. How about print? Please don't touch anything.
Well, you touch things too lightly, and that's the problem. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Well,
Doesn't
not
make
if it
them go
doesn't
away.
register. Very
Let's see what
often the reason
more
it doesn't
is.
register is you touch them so lightly.
Okay, let's see what more is. Whiteboards, notes, raise hand.